listening to the Becoming More Me podcast with me, Teresa Lear Levine. You're already enough. But if you're anything like me, you thrive when you're stretching and developing yourself, creating more of the person you feel called to be. This podcast is here to inspire and support you. Let's release the negative, reinforce the positive, and elevate our vibe together as we tap into our limitless potential to transform and grow. Hey, everybody. It's another episode of Becoming More Me, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. Now, in this episode and the next one that I'm going to do, I really want to break down a little bit about the importance of podcasting and visibility for you. So this week, we're going to talk about visibility. We're going to talk about some of the deeper stuff. And then next week, I'm actually going to share with you the processes that I use to break down my podcasts, like the actual things that we're doing in our business with the material once we record it, so that it becomes all different forms of media. We can work smarter, not harder, and we can turn it into all different things. And that's something that you can do if you're an individual who is recording and creating your own podcast without a team, and definitely something you can also do if you have a team and really get a lot of mileage out of the practices that I've been putting in place for the last couple of years as I've been a podcast guest and a podcast host of the Becoming More Me podcast. So I'm really excited to share that with you. But today I wanted to talk a little bit more about the deeper stuff, because I knew when I started this podcast that there was going to be some kind of a place that this was going, and that there was going to be some deeper, greater meaning than what I could comprehend when I started. And that's what I feel like has really started to unfold in the last few months. And I know a lot of people start podcasts and end podcasts very quickly because they get frustrated or they don't know how to leverage it or whatever else. And people also get frustrated because they're like, man, I started this podcast and I've only got like 7 people that listen to it. And they're thinking, when is this going to change? And I feel like podcasting is definitely, it's a long game. It's not instantly going to be successful for the majority of people unless you're already bringing in a huge audience from somewhere else that is going to be ready to dial in and listen to what you have to offer on your podcast. But that doesn't mean that it's futile, or that these original episodes that maybe the first week they were out only get a few views are not worthy of a listen. But because podcasting is a long game, that also means that those episodes, they live on forever. So when somebody does discover your show in a few months, in a year, in 5 years, whatever, they're going to go back and they're going to listen to the other stuff that you've created. And that's kind of a for better or worse thing. I know that it's very tempting for me to want to bury some of the content that I've created, whether for my podcast or social media or whatever else over the years, because I know that I either know so much more or so much deeper version of what I shared, or because the way that I spoke was not as polished as it is now. Not like I'm super polished or anything, but you know what I mean. And I don't enjoy listening to myself anyway, whether it's a podcast that I'm recording right now or one that I did several years ago. But we often want to just put our best out there to the world, but that is not truly being visible or being authentic. And I've got to say that really seeing transformation in action is to listen to or watch one of my older shows and then one of my newer shows, and to be able to see that evolution of a woman, a mom, a wife, EFT practitioner, an energy strategist, an inner problem solver, an entrepreneur. All of the things that I am are evolving at the same time that I'm creating episode after episode of the Becoming More Me podcast. And that to me is the part I want to take away and I want to hold on to, not the fact that they might have been a lot choppier back in the day, or a lot less planned, or I didn't know what I was doing, or whatever else. I want to take away all of that growth that is happening on so many levels when I do a show, and the consciousness and the awareness. And I found that since I started my show, many of my clients and many of the women that, follow me in my support community and so on have started either guesting on other people's shows or doing their own. And they're getting to see what a difference that makes and how much that allows us to be able to dial in on what we want to share or what we want to teach or how we want to grow our business or how we want to transform ourselves through showing up and talking day in and day out about what we're passionate about and what we really, really want others to know. And it's one of those things where it's kind of like EFT. I can explain EFT, how it works, why it's so amazing. But until you actually do EFT tapping on some of your deep rooted personal issues, you're just not going to get it the same way as somebody who has done the work. And podcasting is very much the same. I can tell you that you're going to grow through that visibility, the exposure, the public speaking, and all of that. But you are not going to understand the level of consciousness and growth that you are going to experience until you do it. And so I was recently talking about this with my podcast booking agent. They actually did this whole visibility breakthrough session. I've shared a lot of snippets of it on my social media. It was a really fun interview, and I felt like it was very powerful also. And it's the same kind of thing that I know they were speaking into me before I signed on as their client, that this was going to be so transformational. And I'm only just now in those beginning months of really understanding it myself, so that I know a year from now, there's going to be a totally deeper level of consciousness and growth than what's happening right now. But I'm on the path. And it's a beautiful path, and I'm really happy to be on it. And if anybody needs a podcast booking agent, please reach out. I am more than happy to personally introduce you to the CEO and founder of the company that I love the most, and my favorite people that I work with there that help me to find really aligned shows to take part in and to meet the right people to be able to get to that next level of success and sharing and everything else. It's been a great experience working with them. So a lot of people end up being kind of scared about going public and doing a show and everything else. And I know I was too. I mean, if you go back and you listen to episode 0 of the Becoming More Me show, it was literally titled No Such Thing as Ready, So I Begin. And it was kind of this rambling of, hey, I don't really know where this is going, but it's starting now. Like, I'm calling the shot and I'm getting going, even though I don't have a total game plan and I have a lot of uncertainty. And for me, that's what I needed. I just needed to pull the carpet out from under myself and get moving and tell my nervous system who was boss. So, because it's very easy to get into that whole fight, flight, flee, freeze, all those things that come up. And we might not even be conscious of the fact that they're coming up for us. But podcasting and public speaking can really help you to work through a lot of that and to be able to see the bigger picture. And I know that it's helped my clients that have gotten into it too, to be able to dial in on their own challenges and their own places where they want to make breakthroughs and experience greater growth, and to peel back those layers of who they need to become in order to achieve the goals that they profess they so want to achieve. So, as with everything that I teach and I coach and I help people with, I've walked the walk myself. I've used EFT tapping to break through my own nerves. I've used it to level up and to let things go so that I can share more and more and more. And part of the conversation that I ended up having when I was doing this visibility breakthrough workshop was around the fact that so many people can basically say that, can say, hey, I've used this, I know it works, and now things are different for me. But they very rarely take the time to go in and tell you exactly what wounds they needed to heal or what places they needed to grow. And I know I hesitated to tell the whole of my story for so long. And I know there'll always be more to tell. I mean, when you've got however many years of life in you and there's things happening every day and every moment, it could take however many years to tell you all of it, and not all of it's worth telling. But I know that I had shame I needed to work through, and subconscious programming that I needed to reprogram and release, and feelings of not being worthy, and all of that kind of imposterism and everything else. And it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to know what it stemmed from. You know, things that I went through in my teens and my early 20s, car accidents that I had that physically left me in a state of being disabled and needing assistance and not being able to continue with the jobs that I thought would take me through college and into a great career. Having to stop going to college because of that and to go back again later in life. Just basically having all of my plans kind of shuffled and put on hold, and having that send me into a real downward spiral of what I'm sure was probably mild depression, and also just so much uncertainty and fear in my system, and not knowing what the future was going to hold and how I was going to accomplish my big dreams, which seemed to be shifting to much smaller dreams right in front of my eyes. And I really didn't like that feeling. And then getting into my first marriage, which it was like I had that gut feeling before we even walked down the aisle that it wasn't going to be right. And yet here I was. And then, having my first child. And when he was just a year old, that's when my ex and I decided we were going to get a divorce. And at that point, it was sell the house and move back in with my mom. I had to get rid of my dogs. I had to put so much stuff into storage, and walked away from the house with less than $1,000 of profit, which once I split that with my ex and other things that needed to be paid was pretty much like walking away with nothing and starting over. And I'm so grateful that I did. And I can really appreciate what I did for myself now, but boy, was it hard then. And it created other, subconscious programs and things that were running that I needed to take care of. So there was a lot of nervous system work that I needed to do on myself, a lot of things that I needed to come to terms with saying out loud so that anyone like you listening would know more of who I am, and that I wouldn't feel shame in sharing that. Because at the end of the day, where I am now in life, I'm so very proud, and I'm so very excited for what the future holds. And I'm so very grateful to the younger version of Teresa that was able to make those really, really difficult decisions and to do the best she knew how at the time, even though I would handle it so differently now. I did the best I knew how at the time. And I honor that. And I'm able to grow from that. And I'm able to share that. And all of those things, and that's just some, like, we're not going to go into like all my issues here. Um, all of those things are things that I've used, the same modalities that I now help other women to make their breakthroughs with. I use them on myself and was able to get massive transformation, huge release, major regulation of my nervous system, and a real unity of mind and body because of the work that I was willing to do so that I could feel differently about what I have been through and not leak so much power back to my past. So it's all consciousness, but becoming comfortable with that really happened through podcasting and through showing up every week and wanting to give more, wanting to have people understand in a more full way who I am, how I can help, what I've been through, and how much is actually possible for them as well. And to really be able to have them see me, because I know that even without that, when I connect with my clients, they feel seen. They know that I see them. They know that I feel them. We really connect energetically. But when they can actually see the humanness in me also, and know that I'm still, I mean, we're all always dealing with challenges and setbacks and obstacles and such. That doesn't ever stop. But to know that I'm able to handle things with so much more ease and grace and joy because of the same modalities that I am now teaching them and imparting to them, and that they are integrating into their way of living, it's so powerful. And there's such greater connection, and it's so worth it. So, finding ways to kind of put your dirt out there and allow it to kind of be seen in transformative ways means so much to the people that you're going to work with, that they can really, really see you. And I can't emphasize that enough, that value of visibility. And when you're showing up on podcasts, especially other people's podcasts, you really get different perspectives and different understanding of what people want to know and want to hear, and how aligned that is with what you ultimately are doing or want to be doing. And that can be majorly valuable as well. And really allow you to tweak things, change things, alter things, so that everything begins getting clearer. It's a great tool for clarity. I mean, I always boast that EFT is an awesome tool for clarity, but so is just getting in tune with your message and doing that through podcasting. They're both absolutely great tools for getting clear on what you actually want to be doing in this world. And I love that, unlike sitting down to write something or doing a video on your own, where you're not having a conversation with somebody else and you can easily edit or take something out or change the way that you said it, that you ditch the perfectionistic part of it when you're in a podcast conversation. Because with rare exception, most podcast hosts don't feel like doing a ton of editing. They don't want to hear like, oh, I really don't like the way I answered that question. Can we redo it? That kind of thing. Like, you show up, you be yourself, you give it your best. And for me, that's when the genius really comes out. When I first started podcast guesting, I would oftentimes like try to anticipate, like, what are they going to ask, and have some somewhat scripted answers. I would have like this file up in front of me with like all the basic things that people usually wanted to know about EFT or whatever else. And that was really helpful for my nerves, and for just, when you're put on the spot about something, to have a good answer, but it felt scripted. And the beauty of podcasts is the conversational quality of them. So some things just kind of became muscle memory, and there are certain ways that I answer certain questions a lot of the time. That's okay, because I found they're kind of the best way to answer it. But I love being on a show where they're not just asking me the general questions, and they're going off the beaten path, and we're really just having a conversation. Because what's the worst thing that's going to happen? They're going to ask me something that I don't know the answer to. And then, as with any conversation, I'm simply going to say, you know what? I don't know about that. That's not my area of expertise, or I'd love to get back to you about that, but I don't think I can give you that answer on this show. And all of those are just normal human answers. I have never proclaimed to know everything. That's for darn sure. And I definitely don't. But I think those conversations are just so valuable. And for me, a self-labeled recovering perfectionist, they really allow me to get out of that headspace of things needing to be perfect, and to just show up as Teresa and give it my best. And I actually make sure that before I'm on anybody's podcast, including my own, that I clear my energy. And if I'm on somebody else's podcast, I'm kind of, zipping up my energy so I don't take anything on from them. And that I'm really making sure that beforehand there's certain, guided meditations or appreciation rampages or things that I'd like to listen to beforehand that really elevate my energy so that I can bring great energy to a show, because people hear that, they feel that it's delivered even in just the audio, definitely in the video. But it's super important. You don't want to be rushing through your day and then all of a sudden, you're on Zoom with the host and you're like, oh, like just kind of frantic and tight and resistant and everything else. I I like to release any expectation of the way that it's going to turn out and to allow for whatever is going to be the best possible thing to come through, and to also understand that I might not know what that is. I might not know what somebody's going to need to hear, but that I'm opening myself up to be a conduit for that and to allow that to come through me, even if I'm unaware that it is. So, a lot of energy work there, a lot of energy work. Everything is energy. It always comes back to energy. But it also just allows me to have more fun with it, not showing up rigid and just showing up like, hey, we're going to have a conversation and it's going to be great. And I can't wait to get to know you. And I'm so excited to share with your audience. And how fun is this? Like, how fun is it that this is the way that I get to share what I love doing? This is the way that I get to promote becoming more me in my business. And this is my life. Like, my life has a lot of podcasting in it these days. And that's not what I could have said a couple of years ago, but this has been such an effective, down to earth, realistic way to share and promote and educate people and have great resources all the time to share from, with a whole bank of podcasts that is always building bigger and bigger. I'm definitely going to throw a link to the visibility breakthrough workshop that I did in the show notes if anybody wants to take a look at that and to understand better what was being spoken about, because I do think that it was a really powerful interview and it really helped you to understand the value of visibility with podcasting. But there's so much greater potential for your own growth and the growth of your business than you even realize. There's so many friends to make out there. I've met so many hosts that, were able to become referral partners, or they've become my clients, or we're able to collaborate with each other and we're aligned. And I never would have met them if I wasn't in this world. But when you go on somebody's show and you get to share all about yourself and everything else, you get to know people pretty quickly. And it hasn't been all that uncommon for me to then invite podcast hosts onto my show to share too. And then I get to know them even better. And all of a sudden, we're friends, we're business partners, we're rooting for each other and helping each other to grow in new ways. And it's just one of the many things that I think a lot of people don't think about when they get into this, is all the ways that this expands your network, and a rising tide raises all ships. So if you've been considering it, give it a try. You can always jump in with guesting first, which can be a lot more sporadic and inconsistent, whereas hosting your own show, it is really recommended that you have normal releases, whether you're going to do weekly or bi-weekly or monthly or whatever. It's good to stick to a schedule if it's your own show, but you can guest more sporadically if you just want to try it out. But if you think you have visibility blocks, if you think that you are somebody who is hiding or resistant to being seen, heard, better understood, you've got worthiness blocks, issues with being enough, those are all things that this can help you with. Now, you may also very well need the help of somebody like me to help you on a nervous system level, to help you to get over those limiting beliefs and those fears and that fight or flight stuff that happens in your system when you think about doing something like this. But both of those together have proven to be a very valuable combination for many of my clients. And I would recommend it to anybody else too. Get on board with me with becoming more me. Get on board with being regularly seen and heard through podcasting, and the sky's the limit. Whatever it is that you're trying to grow or build, whether it's a business or a cause that you're trying to get more eyes on, or you're just not even sure where or what your interest is with it, it will help you find it. It will help you get clarity. The podcasting and the greater work that I'm capable of guiding you through as well. And guys, there's just nobody and nothing that's ever better to invest in than you. Have an awesome day. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening. If you loved this episode, please share it with a friend or post on social media and tag me so I can personally connect and thank you. Until next time, keep taking bold and brave action steps towards becoming more of who you want to be in this world. You are capable, you are worthy, and you are enough. Keep shining your light.